to drive home this idea, let's do a couple of tests. Humans are actually have our limitations, right? I just talked about celebrating humans' ability of seeing, but we also have our limitations. This is a very famous visual illusion test called Stroop test. And the idea is that you all can read the words, but if I ask you to read the color of the word as fast as possible, going from left to right and top to down, you find it's not that easy, right? Try to read it like red, yellow, green, purple, blue, black, orange. It's fighting with you. This is the fight between visual attention and all that. Here's another example. There are two alternating images of the picture, and there's one change, a pretty big change that's happening between the two alternating pictures. I don't know if you spot the change. Do you spot it?
The engine.
Yes, it's the engine, right? So it takes a while to spot it. So this is a very famous psychology experiment called change blindness. Now, all this is fun. Stroop test is fun. This is fun. But this is not fun. That human attention is limited. And in some situations in our work and life, that kind of attention limit can be dire. For example, medical errors are the third leading cause of death in America's healthcare system. And of course, leaving a pair of scissors in the body of the patient is kind of the iconic image of medical errors. But there are so many medical errors, pharmaceutical errors, there's, procedure errors, clerical errors, diagnostic errors. So one has to be very careful. For example, in surgery rooms, honestly, scissors don't get left in the bodies typically, but much smaller things like suture needles or a piece of gauze and all that. So and today, most of this is still just tracked by hands, right? Like we have these checklists to track in the surgery rooms. If something is missing, the surgery has to be paused. On average, that pause is close to an hour. And think about the danger for the patient, the exposure to bacteria and the bleeding and all that, just because we have to search for that item. So if there is a way to use AI to help our doctors, surgeons to track items, that would be so powerful. And this is just a demo. This is not a deployed system. We're not there in terms of fidelity, but this is a demo to show that we can use AI to count, in this case, gauze, and all that. And this is just an example of pushing AI to see what humans don't see. Here's another example that is really fun. I don't know if I showed this before, but this is one of my favorite visual illusions where I'm just giving you the answer. If you look at the two square A and B on a checkerboard on the top, it is so hard to believe they have the same grayscale or luminance. And then you look at the bottom, you're like, of course they do. But why? Even though you have the bottom picture in front of you, seeing the top, it still gives you the illusion. Why? Because evolution has pre-wired us in conjecturing or understanding our world in its common way, with the common physics of the shape of objects, lighting source, how shadows are made, and all that. This is so deep in our evolution, in our visual development, that it's hard for us to see it another way. So what I'm trying to get at is there's bias in our human visual system. The bias might come from evolutionary construct. The bias can come from our social experience. The bias can come from the data we're exposed to. But some of these biases can be harmful. right? When the bias happens that became unfair to a group of people, a community. And we have to be aware of this. A few years ago, face recognition algorithm was not good, and it tends to recognize certain skin color and even gender better than the others. And it has consequences. Think about self-driving car. So think about, many other medical use cases. So we have to be vigilant about this. I do believe that AI bias has been a problem that people now are carrying. A few years ago, this problem was so new that many people are not even paying attention. But fast forward to 2025, I'm not saying we have solved this problem, but I'm personally a lot happier to see that so many people are paying attention to this, not only just in academia, but also in industry. And then there's another kind of not seeing. And this is interesting. Sometimes not seeing is exactly what we want because you want to respect privacy. So how do you create AI that helps people to see, yet you still want it not to see what people don't want you to see? This is a very deep, it's a technical problem as well as a human problem. So from a technical point of view, there are many ways to consider ML, machine learning privacy. I'm just listing here from a visual approach point of view. A few years ago, our lab wrote this paper about using smart cameras in patient rooms or patient homes to help doctors to see better. But even there, we have to recognize issues like faces or just full body information and even homes. And this is a list of potential solutions. For example, you can do blurring, or you can do masking, you can do dimensionality reduction, but you can also, try to do different approaches, for example, federated learning, so that you don't send all the data to the server, or encryption and other things. So I'm not going to belabor this, but there's one work I want to show you. It's not even my work, but I really like this work. And it's a work about taking videos of people and try to recognize the action of people, but yet respecting the privacy of people. How do you do that, right? For example, in this case, you want to take a video of this kid moving in a scene. There are ways to do this. If you blur this, or defocus this, or do some of these, it kind of, you can provide, you can protect privacy, but you also lose enough information that you might not even know what this person is doing. And for many applications, the whole goal is to know what this person is doing. So in this particular work, led by Juan Carlos's students, they actually did a combination of hardware and software approach, where they had crafted a lens that is actually that actually filters visual data in a particular way. So particular that if you look at the top row, the lens, what the lens captures into the camera protects the privacy a lot. You don't see the person's face, you don't see the body, and so on. But because it's a lens that's particularly designed in connection with a piece of software, it can help to back out the movement information or the human activity information without backing out face information. So that's a really interesting approach. That's a hybrid between hardware and software, aiming towards important applications that you want to see people to protect them, but you don't want to see too much because you want to respect privacy. So that's a work I really like. I really like the spirit of that work. So, okay, so in this part of the lecture, I shared with you a number of things, just considerations of building AI to see what humans don't see. Sometimes we're pushing AI, like fine-grained recognition of birds, to go beyond human ability. Those are superhuman ability. sometimes we know humans are not good. We have bias or we have attention issues. And then we want to use AI to help us. And then sometimes we generally have situations we don't want anyone to see. And then how do you use AI to continue to help without violating those privacy concerns? So you can see that AI is a very interesting, powerful tool. It can both help but amplify us. And if we have bias, if we have issues, AI can amplify us too. So when we build AI, it is so important not only to take that technology perspective, but also to take the human perspective, to commit to study, forecast, and guide the AI to understand its human impact and respect human values. So that's the second message, take-home message. And again, a number of collaborators and students participated in this work. Okay. Now let's talk about building AI to see what humans want to see. And in fact, we're going to go beyond seeing. We're going to connect seeing and doing together. So if you think about today's societal anxiety about AI, one of the biggest anxiety is labor. A lot of headline news will say labor is under threat, robots taking over jobs. The truth is the picture is complex. Denying job change is wrong. Every technological shift in human history has caused labor market change. And some of them are very painful. Some of them can lead to even civil wars and wars. But also that change sometimes is inevitable. And a tiny digression. A lot of the labor threat rhetoric that we have been hearing, think about physical labors. But today, in the past 2 years, if you look at Gen AI's impact, is white-collar jobs that are drastically being impacted, especially software engineering and analytical work in offices. So there's just definitely labor change. But in the meantime, we also need to recognize that AI also can be helpful. We actually fundamentally have human labor shortages in many situations, especially in elderly care as well as healthcare. First of all, as modern medicine improves, human life expectancy increases. And that just inevitably pushes a society towards longer living. And that's a good thing. But in the meantime, we have shortages of laborers. Young people need to work. And that's how to make this society vibrant, economy vibrant. But who is taking care of our elderlies? Who are taking care of our chronically ill? Even in America's hospital, we have such an attrition of healthcare workers, especially nurses, that we don't have enough hands, ears, eyes to help our patients. So instead of thinking about this word replace, we actually can think about AI augmenting. And you got a glimpse of that in my surgery room example. Indeed, in healthcare, there's so many spaces in healthcare that we don't have enough pairs of eyes. And that's what I call the dark spaces of healthcare, from surgery room to patient room to pharmaceutical to homes and so on. So how do we make AI help? And this is something that Isang has been leading a ton of this work, also with Zing, is that we have been looking at this problem of ambient intelligence for healthcare, where we combine smart sensors with machine learning algorithms to glean health critical insights from these situations in healthcare setup, so that we can alert the patients or family members or doctors in time to help patients. And again, the fuller paper is in this particular paper we published a couple of years ago. Let me just give you a couple of examples. One example is this hand hygiene project, which actually started way before COVID. Hand hygiene turns out to be really important for keeping hospital infection low. Hospital-acquired infection is actually one of the leading causes of American patients' fatality in our hospitals. It kills more than 3 times more people per year than car accidents nationwide. And it is really hard to control. Most of these germs are passed from patient room to patient room, and then they kind of just brew together. So what do? The hospitals try to use human auditors, but we just talked about, we don't even have enough nurses, let alone hiring auditors. And also you cannot hire enough of them. There's human fatigue. We just talked about human attention problem. So this is not a pretty prohibitive solution. There were some technological solutions like RFID, put the badge, if the badge or the person wearing the badge is close to the sink or the hand hygiene, hand sanitizer dispenser, it gives you the hint that the person, or most likely the doctor or the nurses, is washing their hands. But that's very non-specific. You cannot guarantee. And the hospital rooms are pretty small. Corridors are small. And just standing next to something doesn't mean you're doing it. So a few years ago, we did this project where we put smart sensors that protects privacy by just only gleaning depth information, like the blue screen, the blue video there. And then we use computer vision algorithm to classify actions. Is the person washing hand or not washing hand? And the result is that if you compare ground truth with the algorithm output versus human outputs, or human detection results, you can see algorithm is so much better and more consistent than humans. You have to almost show the same video to 4 humans to get almost as good as AI. And this is just not plausible. If it's one person, you can see how sparse the detection is, and that's not good. So this is one application. Another application we worked on is ICUs. ICU is where patients fight life and death. ICU is also where 1% of US GDP is spent. So making ICU as effective, as safely as possible is a top priority. One of the the goal of ICU is to get our patient safely out of ICU and go into step-down units or even go home. So one of the most important thing people have learned in ICU is to help patients to move. Proper movement, which we call mobilization, is actually important for recovery. But this is a very dicey situation. You have to get nurses to help, doctors have to give orders, and you have to move properly, and it has to be in different time, like designated time, and you have to assess the movement. And all this is not easy, right? So we collaborated with Stanford as well as Utah's Intermountain Hospital to put these smart sensors in ICU units and help doctors to monitor patient movement. In this particular case, 4 different kind of movements: getting out of bed, getting in bed, getting out of chair, getting in chair. These things are so important for ICU patients. I know that for us, it's a no-brainer, but this really is critical. And you can see that AI can help to do the kind of detection and prediction that is so helpful for doctors, especially when there's a labor shortage. Last but not the least example is aging in place. And this is just so important for, many reasons. People, seniors want to live home independently and healthily. And, remember during the beginning of COVID, when we had so much fatality among the aging, seniors, a lot has to do with hospital overrun and overtaxed hospital system. So keeping seniors safe and well in their homes is really critical. And using smart sensors, we can help, early detection of infection, especially using thermal cameras Or mobility, we just talked about in ICU, similar here. Or understanding sleep patterns, or understanding dietary patterns. All this are realms of possibilities by AI and smart sensors. And then last but not least, what if there's still labor shortage after smart sensors? The thing about smart sensors is that they're information gathering system, but they cannot go there and help to turn a patient or bring water and medicine pills to the elderly. So this brings us to the last technical topic, which is embodied AI, or we would call a large part of embodied AI is robotics. And this is where I find it extremely exciting because it closes the loop between perception and action. And if you think about the Cambrian explosion of evolution, when there's an onset of eyes, animals start to move. So the area of robotics is where we can close the loop between seeing and doing. But it's not easy, right? Robots, as much as we're very excited by them, still are very, very slow. They are very, very clumsy. It's very hard for them to adapt to a generalizable situation. And in today's robotic research, we as a field have made a ton of progress, and Stanford is definitely one of the centers of robotic learning. But still, most of these work are kind of constrained in their setup, are short horizon tasks like pick and place, and it has, it has anecdotal setup and lack of standard benchmark. So let me just share with you a couple of work in our lab. One work is a few years ago, we're looking at how to bring robots to the wild. If we have to pre-designate the set of tasks, it's kind of unsatisfying. On the other hand, if you look at today's LLM, it's totally in the wild. You can talk about anything. So my student Wenlong and a few students want to close this gap. So this idea is that how do we give an open instruction to a robot, any instruction, without pre-training everything in a closed world, and the robot can do some tasks. So let's say your training set is open a door like that. In the wild, you have doors like that. So how do you make some progress in that problem? And so the goal is in the wild generalization. And here's a result, or overall algorithm. I don't know if this is so glitchy, but whatever. What you're saying is, we want to tell this robot arm to open a drawer by planning a motion path that avoids knocking down that flower. And all these instructions were not pre-trained. So what we do is actually we borrow the latest advances in LLM as well as in visual language model. And the idea is that we use LLM and LLM to give us an instruction set. And then we use visual language model to help us to recognize or understand the environment. And then we turn that into a motion planning map so that the robotic arm can execute. And because we're using LLMs as well as VLMs, we don't have to, we get rid of the problem of training robot in a closed world and bring them to a more generalizable or in the wild. And the details is the instruction of open top drawer comes in. LLM turns this into like literally codes. And then because of these instructions like a drawer or handle, we send this information to a VLM model, and that model detects drawer and handle in the scene. And then because of that, it updates its information and then it updates a motion map. This is presented by a heat map to show you where the robot arm should focus, where it should not focus. And with that, then you give it another instruction, but watch out for the vase. Again, it goes through the same thing with LLM, writes the code or generates the code, send it through a VLM model. VLM model detects the object and then updates the motion planning map. In this case, it's the negative, not the positive, because you want to avoid that. And then combining with the previous map, you get a heat map of knowing where to avoid and where to go. And eventually, what we do is we do this for the motion planning map. We do it for rotation, to gripper, velocity, and then this is the result. Actually, let me just show you this. This is the actual result of the robot. And then we do this for many different tasks, right? We can do it for articulated object manipulation. We can do it, we can, here just many different examples, napkins or sweeping the floor. What is this? Getting toast, setting up table, and also dealing with online disturbances and so on. So this is one work. Another work I want to just show you quickly is that overall robotics research is still lacking good benchmark, and while we're still experimenting in the labs, we know real world is so much more complex, so much more uncertain, have large variability, is so interactive and social, and has a lot of multitasking tasks. And then we know that both natural language and computer vision has benefited a lot from setting up important large-scale data sets for both training and benchmark. So in our lab, we have been working on this project that is towards an ecological robotic learning, building an ecological robotic learning environment, and try to encourage researchers to benchmark against a large and diverse set of activities. And that's the behavior benchmark, which is benchmark for everyday household activity in virtual, interactive, and ecological environments. Now here's a question, because this lecture has a lot to do with human values, is who is to say which tasks robots should do? I know that every graduate students who are working on robotics just want two tasks. One is laundry, the other one is dishwasher. That's great. But moving beyond grad school, what are the tasks we should get robots to do for us? So instead of us coming up with this task list, we actually did a human-centered survey to ask humans that what would you like robots to help you? Let me test this. Would you like a robot to help you to clean the kitchen floor? Say yes or no. Okay, good. Normal people would say yes. Shoveling snow. Okay. Folding laundry. Okay, good. Cooking breakfast. See, we're getting mixture answers, right? What about opening Christmas gift? Right, exactly. People are different. Like, I actually think robot can do this pretty well, but we don't want it. We even ask, one of the tasks we ask is buying wedding rings. Can you imagine that? So what we did is actually, we want to respect human preference. So we took a bunch of government surveys from labor office in US and Europe and so on, and put together thousands of everyday activity tasks. And then we went online to find people. We want to be as diverse as possible, but I think we have room to improve. But we found 1,400 people, and to answer these tasks and tell us which tasks they want robots to help. And then we rank that. And you can see that just like grad students, people want robots to help with cleaning, a lot of cleaning, toilet cleaning, floor cleaning. But people don't want robots to play squash for you, or to buy a wedding ring, or to even mix baby cereals. There's a lot of tasks that matters to us as humans, emotionally or socially or whatever. So our goal is first we decided, we have a principled way to decide which are the 1,000 tasks that we want to train robots for. And those are the tasks that humans prefer to get help. And with that in mind, we have to actually build a virtual environments. So we scanned or acquired 3D scene from 50 different real world environments, from restaurants to apartments to grocery stores to offices and so on. And then we acquired this number is actually outdated. We acquired more than 10,000 object assets, 3D assets that has a lot of properties, whether it's articulation, deformability, and all those properties. And then we have to build a simulation environment. A lot of people have built simulation environment. Let me just fast forward. But our particular simulation environment was a collaboration with NVIDIA's Omniverse group. And we were going for building a physically, perceptually, and also interactively high quality simulation environment. And this, especially taking account, for example, physical effects like thermal transparency, deformability, and so on. We also tested our behavior environment against other environments in terms of perceptual realism from human user study. And, here are some of the examples of physical interaction, such as cloth or liquids and so on. So there's a lot of nuance that has gone into this work. And let me just fast forward. And these are some benchmark we did compared to other work. Okay, let me just fast forward. So this is ongoing work actually in our lab. And because of this, we're able to, we are using behavior to help us to learn robotics, to help us actually to push us to gather more interesting data, and also to use that for even cognitive studies. Let me just fast forward. One thing I want to share with you is that, let me just share these numbers, is today's algorithms still cannot do behavior tasks. And of all these roles, the top role is what we wish robots can do. Give them no privileged information. They have to be dropped in the environment and do these tasks. And we benchmarked 3 behavior tasks using today's robotic algorithm. And the performance is just 0. Once you start to give more privileged information or make assumptions that make the task simpler, like magic motion or some, perfect memory and all that, things start to get better. So this is, if you look at it, only look at the top row, you get pretty depressed by today's robots. But as a grad student, I hope you're inspired, because that means we have a lot of room to grow. Okay. These are just different papers from our lab. I'm going to actually fast forward because I think we've talked enough about this. By the way, we're also doing digital twin of behavior in the digital environment as well as in the real world environment, and that's a great way of testing real to sim transfer. Again, this is an unsolved problem, and there's a long way to go. And in this particular case, we're showing you that this robot without speeding up, you can see how slow it is. It's trying to clean up this room. And, okay, hooray. This is actually some of the mistakes that this robot makes in, for example, it cannot pick up the bottle, or earlier it just went the wrong way and placed it in the wrong place. So there's still a lot of mistakes. Okay, let me fast forward. We're also using this environment to study visually impaired patients, and this is a great way of putting patients in a safe environment to study. One last thing I want to show you is really super cool, and this is the last technical work I want to show, is that we also now are collaborating with psychologists and doctors to study how we can use brain waves to control robots. So what you're seeing here is a demo where a grad student, I think, is wearing this EEG cap, and that just is sending instructions. And the robotic arm is cooking a Japanese meal purely from thoughts. There's no invasive brain control. This is from electrical signals. What we had to do is to pre-train these thoughts. You have to pre-train the robotic arm with, say, lift or place or drop or whatever. And once you do that, this is an entire meal cooked based on the wave. This is really sci-fi, and this has happened last year. So I'm pretty excited by where all this is going, combining vision and perception and robotics, and also, helping people in clinical setting. This is really, the future of this is helping severely paralyzed patients. Okay, so behavior project is really aimed at augmenting people. It's a large scale, diverse benchmark, and it has realistic and ecological, physics and perception. And this is the last part of what the last take-home message is, that we not only want to build AI to just do things or see things, we really want to build it to help people. AI being an augmentation tool or enhancing tool for humanity is very important, instead of a tool that replaces us.